What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 394 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, June 16, 2021. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And be sure to drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Two quick announcements before we get started here. With two interviews, actually. One went up yesterday with LA Knight, the new $1 million champion. Check that out from Fanside of Daily DDT. The article is up right now on the website and in audio form from right here on the channel yesterday. So check out my conversation with the former Eli Drake from yesterday here in the channel. And then tomorrow, which I've already since confirmed on Twitter. If you're following me on Twitter, if you're not, what the hell are you waiting for? At WrestleRant, we got another interview dropping tomorrow morning here on the channel. And it's a big one. We got arguably, not even arguably, one of the greatest and best women's wrestlers in the world today. Charlotte Flair, baby, 13-time women's champion, is coming here to the channel for the very first time to talk all about Hell in a Cell, Andrade, SummerSlam, and so much more. It was a really, really cool conversation. I actually just got done recording it like 20 minutes ago, and that's going up tomorrow in audio form here on the channel and in article form over on Bleacher Report. So check out that exclusive interview. We covered a lot of great topics. She could not have been nicer. I know people have this idea who Charlotte Flair is because they see her on the show and she acts a certain way. She plays that heel character extremely well, but in person, or I didn't talk to her in person, but as a person, she could not be nicer. So check out that conversation tomorrow. It was a really cool conversation. I did talk over it a few points just because there was a bit of a delay in the phone on Zoom a few times. But other than that, it was a lot of fun. So check out that here on the channel tomorrow and an article form over on Bleacher Report. Like I said, tomorrow morning. So be sure to hit that little bell button to be notified when that video goes up tomorrow morning and to never miss a video here on the channel. And like I said, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate the support. So let's get started with today's questions, beginning with the Twitter questions. At Iwagu91, his first question was, where does the Cruiserweight Classic rank among your favorite tournaments? I would say it's up there. I think it's one of the best tournaments that the company's ever done. WWE, that is. And they've done a lot of good tournaments. I feel like it was tournament overload at one point. I enjoyed the 2019 King of the Ring overall. I thought that had a lot of great wrestling. Not my favorite tournament ever, but I thought it was a good tournament. You know, they had a lot of good tournaments in recent years, over the last decade plus since I started watching wrestling. But that Cruiserweight Classic might have had some of the best wrestling I've ever seen in WWE's history. So I would really have to think about it. It is among my favorites, absolutely, but I'm trying to think what else would be up there in terms of like best tournaments I've seen. I'm sure there's a few that I'm not even thinking of, including from other promotions and stuff like that, but it's definitely up there. That Cruiserweight Classic was just magical, to say the least. It was just fantastic, and we kind of get matches like that now all the time, but back in 2016, we weren't getting those type of matches all the time in WWE, so it was very special. We got to see a lot of fresh faces involved, and it introduced us to a lot of the people that we have now on the show today, which is really cool. His second question, do you think that Hell in a Cell should be discontinued as a pay-per-view event? I do, and I've said that many, many times. I don't know why it's still a pay-per-view. I don't really see it as being a draw for the company as it was, even if it was back in 2009, 2010, 2011. That was the only reason why they made it a pay-per-view, was because their pay-per-view numbers were in the toilet. So they generated all this, or they tried to generate all this new interest by creating themed pay-per-views. And they sucked. All of them almost are just completely pointless. Extreme Rules, TLC, Hell in a Cell. And there's been some good Extreme Rules, some good TLC shows. I have not seen many great Hell in a Cell shows. More often than not, it's not a good pay-per-view. Hopefully Sunday is the exception, but there is absolutely no reason for one certain match type to have its own pay-per-view, unless maybe it's Money in the Bank. That is the only exception I will make, because that is almost consistently one of the better pay-per-views they do all year. Hell in a Cell is definitely, that's not the case with Hell in a Cell, and it is absolutely devalued and demeaned the Hell in a Cell concept. It means almost nothing at this point for a match to take place inside Hell in a Cell. Lashley and Drew could use the stipulation. I don't look at those two and say, oh, they need the Hell in a Cell, but it makes sense in this current stage of their storyline. And then you look at, Rey and Roman. The feud just fucking started. Why is it having a Hell in a Cell stipulation, which is completely pointless? So, do away with Hell in a Cell. All the pay-per-views are on Peacock and on the network now elsewhere. Having theme pay-per-views I really don't think matters. That won't stop them from trying to come up with new ideas, and I think that's great. But to rely on the ideas they've had, like Hell in a Cell and Extreme Rules, they're just not good ideas. I mean, they were doing good pay-per-view numbers back when we had Judgment Day and Unforgiven and Backlash, and those pay-per-views weren't themed. It's good creative is the problem. It's not the pay-per-views, I don't think. It's the fucking creative. So come up with good ideas, good matches, good cards, and do them less often, and I think people would be more inclined to check them out. So that being said, get rid of Hell in a Cell as a pay-per-view. His third question, kind of going off what he asked a week or two ago. Had Batista stuck around in 2010, who do you think he should have feuded with upon the conclusion of his feud with Cena? I don't know. I feel like the Cena feud really did feel like that was it for him in WWE, because there weren't a lot of feuds left for him to do in WWE had he not left. The one person I kept going back to at the time was Sheamus. Sheamus kind of took the role that Batista had as like the lead heel on Raw, that dominant-esque figure. That was the only feud I was kind of like looking forward to seeing at some point, and we didn't get it. And Sheamus was badly booked from the get-go. I mean, he was pretty dominant for a stretch, but then he like had a weak title reign and it just wasn't good. But I think Batista and Sheamus, they had a couple of matches when Batista came back in 2014. They were good, so I think they could have had a few good matches back in 2010. Beyond that, though, Batista had feuded with everyone that was on top at that point. I mean, Batista and Wade Barrett, who gives a shit? He already feuded with Rey Mysterio. He already feuded with Undertaker like twice. Cena, Edge had not yet retired. We had seen that a million times. Him and Jericho we had seen before. I felt like he feuded with pretty much everyone on the show. Kane, we had seen that before. I don't know. I felt like it was the right time for Batista to leave because they kind of had used him. He hadn't done everything he could have possibly had done, but they had him feud with pretty much everybody. And so had he been demoted to like the mid-card or something, other than that, which wouldn't have been good, I don't really know what else you do with him in 2010 with that current landscape of talent that was on top at that point. So Sheamus was the only name that really came to mind as someone that I could have thought, could have made for a viable opponent for Batista. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter and YouTube machine. Check out his YouTube show, Real Honesty, with John Ritland. Does great work over on YouTube and on Twitter as well. His tweets are great. His first question was, do you think the NWA will be able to put together a good enough cards to justify having back-to-back pay-per-views in August? I'm hopeful they can, but with the talent depth issues, it may be difficult. So we kind of talked about this a little bit on Twitter last night because we were tweeting about power and whatnot. I don't think 2 pay-per-views back-to-back is a good idea. The most recent NWA pay-per-view, honestly, I thought was really good. The When Our Shadows Fall pay-per-view, I thought was actually really good. They put together a pretty good card. The finish to the show was lame. We talked about that last week. But the overall show was fine as a 2-hour pay-per-view. It doesn't have to be like this 3 or 4 hour extravaganza. If they can have like a 2-hour show, if that's really all you need from a company like the NWA. They don't need to be longer shows. I think the show got done before 6 and it started at 4, so I think that's perfect. Can you have 2 pay-per-views? So that's the question. Will the women be on the first pay-per-view too? I think the first one might have been the women's pay-per-view, and then the second one might be like all of the NWA. Will the women be on twice? Because the women were a big part of this most recent pay-per-view. Camille and Thunder Rosa, I thought, was the best match the best match in the entire show. Or Camille and Serena Deeb, rather. They also had a women's tag team match with Taryn Terrell and Kylie Ray versus Melina and Thunder Rosa. That was won, I think, by... Did Taryn Terrell and Kylie Ray win that? I'm pretty sure they did. But, those were 2 of the best matches on that show. If you take them off the NWA pay-per-view, what do you have left? I mean, they have a pretty good male roster. They just need more names because they lost a lot of talent to AEW and Impact and WWE due to the pandemic and them having to shut down for a little bit. So, I don't know if back-to-back pay-per-views is a good idea. The women's pay-per-view, I'm hopeful they can put together a good enough card, and they've let AEW use Thunder Rosa a lot, so I would hope in return they get to use a Britt Baker or Hikaru Shida, or Riho. Serena Deeb is a given, I would think. But, AEW, for as many issues as their women's division has, and it doesn't really have that many issues at this point, I'm hopeful they can use at least some of their women for that pay-per-view. Impact as well. NWA has shown no indication that they're using or working with Impact in any form. It's really AEW's kind of working with everyone. NWA was working with Ring of Honor at one point, but they don't have a lot of women on their roster, so maybe you can incorporate them, but unless they have women signed, I'm not really sure what good that's going to do. But yeah, Impact, if they can kind of rekindle that relationship between NWA and Impact, there's a lot of women you can use from that promotion too. I don't think WWE is going to get involved. I think it's going to be like All In, but for like women, without WWE involved. I would love to see a Sasha Banks on there or a Charlotte or whatever. I don't think that's going to happen. But, I do think it's an idea that could work if you get talent from other promotions. If it's just the NWA, they have like 6 women. You can't build a pay-per-view around 6 women, so they're going to need a little more than that. There's a lot of free agent women out there as well. They released the Iconics, Ruby Riott, Santana Garrett. NWA can use those women if they want, if they even want to be a part of that. The women's pay-per-view could work with talent from other promotions. The other pay-per-view they have that other weekend, or that weekend in August, I'm a little more skeptical about because, I don't know, they just don't have a very deep roster in the NWA. And if it's a shorter pay-per-view, fine, but even without the women, who are you going to bring in to help fill out that card? That's my question. John's second question, do you think WWE needs to drop some of their seemingly endless amount of championships, and if so, which ones and why? I mean, starting with the 24/7 championship, obviously. The 24/7 championship is completely pointless. We saw it back on Raw a few weeks ago. Akira Tozawa pinned R-Truth for it. We haven't seen the title since. Let's fucking keep it that way. Completely pointless title. Get rid of it. Honestly, the women's tag team titles on both shows, NXT and the main roster, it's not that it's a bad idea. It's just the idea that they're not using them correctly. And it's not even that they don't have enough women. I mean, they keep firing people left and right, but I don't know, especially in NXT, those women's tag titles are completely pointless. I mean, they have a couple of teams, but it's not an idea that works. It just doesn't work. I mean, focus on your one women's title. And again, NXT is the best women's division, I would argue, almost anywhere. And even they can't use it properly. Impact has their own set of women's tag team titles, and that works. They don't have a ton of teams, but for whatever reason, it works over there. In NXT, with the amount of talent they have, and there's just no actual teams for the most part, it just doesn't work. So, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that, and I would get rid of the women's tag titles on both the main roster, which are, they have almost no teams there anyway. I would get rid of those and put more effort into the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championship pictures, which are good at the moment, but they could always be better. So yeah, take away the women's tag titles on both NXT and the main roster. What else to get rid of? I don't know. I feel like NXT UK has their own set of titles. They have their own little mid-card championship now, kind of that being the Heritage Cup Championship. NXT has like the $1 million title. I don't think that's going to be like an actively defended championship. That's kind of more of a prop than anything, I think, for LA Knight. The Cruiserweight Championship, they're finally using properly in NXT with the whole open challenge thing. That's cool. I'm trying to think what else they even have. I would just kind of get rid of the women's tag titles and the 24/7 championship. They do have a lot of titles, but like you kind of need your own world championship for each brand. If you're going to do a brand split, you need your own mid-card title. I would think you need 2 separate women's titles. I would not merge them. You need your own... Actually, do you need your own tag titles? I don't know, because the tag team divisions on both shows are fairly weak. So, I mean, they've gotten away with doing 2 sets of tag titles for a long time now. But if they merge them, I don't think I would complain. I mean, if they're going to have the women merge their tag titles, then why not do the same with the men? I know the men, there's more men than there are women in WWE on the roster, but I would probably merge those. So get rid of the 24/7 championship, get rid of the women, I'm saying get rid of the women's tag titles, then do what you would do with the women's with the men's, but I don't know. I just don't think a women's tag team, division is necessary, just given how they book their women currently. And they got a lot of time on TV this week. I thought that was great. They had 4 women's matches, I think. They had a segment with Mandy Rose, Dana Brooke, Natalia Tamina, and a lot of other stuff backstage. We're getting 3 women's matches on Sunday's pay-per-view, and I think that's great. But we need more than that. We don't need more women. We need more women on the show, but I'm saying, like, in terms of the actual creative of these said storylines, for the women's tag team division, it's almost non-existent right now. Oh yeah, we have Natalya and Tamina versus Mandy and Dana Brooke, but beyond that, what else do you have left? There are no teams left in this company. Carmella and Billie Kay are no more. Billie Kay got fired. The Riot Squad are no more. Naomi and Lana are no more because half of those people got fired. The Iconics are no more. So what do you do? I mean, there's no teams left. I mean, Shayna and Nia aren't really a team anymore, nor should they be. So, I don't know. I would just get rid of the tag team titles for the women and then probably merge the men's because those tag team divisions are fairly thin on both brands. Raw and SmackDown, that is. John's next question here. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of Punk's pipe bomb. Do you think it still holds up today, or have people overhyped it? I personally feel that that even though it was a work shoot, his words have been coming true more and more with each passing year. No, you're right. They absolutely are true, and I don't know. You're asking the wrong person because I'm a Punk fan, so obviously I'm going to say that's not overhyped. But I still remember watching it a decade later, what I was feeling in that moment, what other people were saying about it, the instant reaction, and the amazing summer that kind of spurred from that for WWE. One of the most exciting periods I've ever been a WWE fan for was the summer of 2011. You never knew what was going to happen next. You never knew what was going to be said next. The thing with the work shoots, we get them so goddamn often in all these companies now, to the point where they don't even mean anything. And not to say that Punk invented the work shoot, but we weren't getting very many of them pre-Punk in 2011. So to hear him call Triple H Paul, or to mention the releases that happened the weekend before, that was a big deal. That was a really big deal at the time, and it elevated Punk to a new level. He was white hot. The matches with him and Cena were great. Just the booking towards the end obviously kind of faltered with the whole Triple H and, the Triple H Punk shit and whatever. But that summer is still one of my favorite periods as a WWE fan, and Money in the Bank is still one of my favorite pay-per-views as a WWE fan. So it was more than just a moment. It wasn't just a moment and then we all moved on and it was like whatever. Like honestly, Austin 316 is still one of the greatest promos of all time. But, it's not all about the aftermath. And obviously Austin ended up being fine and he won multiple world championships, of course. But at the time that we cut that promo, and he wasn't even on SummerSlam. Like it wasn't like it led to this amazing summer in WWE 1996. And I'm not even saying the summer season for WWE that year was bad. But for Steve Austin specifically, what did he do in the months that followed the promo? Nothing. It wasn't until later on in the year that he ended up feuding with Bret Hart. So, no, I don't think people overhype it. People calling, oh, that's a pipe bomb. That's stupid. But I don't really see that as much anymore. It's been so long that, like, when someone cuts a pipe bomb promo, so to speak, on TV, I don't see fans calling it a pipe bomb. So that's good. And Punk even hates the term pipe bomb at this point because it's been so overused. But the promo itself is not overhyped. A lot of the things he said in that promo were correct. It took him to the next level. It was something unprecedented for WWE at that point. And again, not to say he was the first one to do it, but he was one of the first few people to do it effectively. Bret Hart had done it before. Even Joey fucking Styles had done it. But, it really, really took CM Punk rather, in 2011 to that next level. And cemented him as not just a star, but a megastar in that company for the next few years before he left. So, I'm glad you brought that up. That promo is coming up quick. It's going to be 10 years and the 27th, I think? So that is just insane to think about. Next questions come from @noob_n_co1991. First question was, what are your thoughts on Triple H's comments about NXT talent being misused on the main roster? I pretty much have to agree with him. One example of the subject is Sasha Banks or Asuka. Not everyone being called up is misused or, badly booked. Asuka's booking lately has made her a complete fucking afterthought, but she has not been unsuccessful on the main roster. She is a multi-time Raw Women's Champion, SmackDown Women's Champion, Tag Team Champion, Money in the Bank winner, Royal Rumble winner. Need I go on? She's won pretty much everything. NXT Women's Champion. She's done it all in WWE for the most part. Pretty much everything aside from main eventing WrestleMania. So, not everyone that gets called up is ruined. But I do have to agree with the masses that it's a wide percentage of people that get called up that don't do well. And Triple H's comments were, listen, he is right to an extent when he says that, when people get called up, sometimes they peak too early or they just don't work on the main roster. Yeah, if you're the fucking vaudevillains, you're not going to work on Raw or SmackDown because the gimmick wasn't, it was kind of a niche thing. It was a niche thing in NXT. I don't think that was ever going to work long-term on Raw or SmackDown. That would have died a death fairly quickly, and it fucking did. They were fired within a year. Or, not Aiden English, but Simon Gotch was. The team did not last more than a year on the main roster. The Ascension were there for almost fucking 5 years, I think. They were there for a long-ass time. Almost exactly 5 years, actually. But they never had any success on the main roster, and that's another great example of, like, a tag team that worked in NXT to a certain extent, but on the main roster, it died a fucking death. It didn't work. There's a lot of people that get called up that should have been way more successful than they were. EC3, I mean, I could go down the fucking list, but there are just so many women. I mean, Emma being one of them, she should have been more successful years ago. Paige had a pretty good career for herself before she had to retire, but Enzo and Cass were badly booked after a while. They should have been the next big thing, and they were broken up within a year. The Profits have done well. Heavy Machinery never really went anywhere. They were popular, but then they got broken up. They got broken up, and fucking Otis turned heel, Tucker turned heel, and Tucker got fired, and Otis is a heel now. So that was not what it could have been. Again, the list goes on and on and on. Sanity was another group that probably could have achieved more, and they just didn't. So it's crazy. It really is. So I gotta say that Triple H, he was right to a certain extent. Yeah, some people just don't work on the main roster. He is right when he says that. But there are a lot of examples of people not being as big of deals as they should be on the main roster because of how they're booked. And they kind of peaked in NXT booking-wise because the main roster booking just isn't as good. Rollins is probably the biggest success story to come out of NXT. Roman Reigns as well, obviously. And beyond the 4 horsewomen, the well kind of runs dry. Asuka being one of them, yes, but again, that's the vast minority. They have called up a lot of people over the last 5 to 6, 7 years, and very few of them have actually gone on to do big things, unfortunately. But the thing is, though, with Triple H's comments, what do you expect him to fucking say? Like, when I interviewed him last August, I was going to ask him about that, but I knew he wasn't going to give me a straight answer, so why even bother? You know what I mean? Like, it's just stupid. Like, what do you say about the talent on the main roster? Like, what do you fucking expect him to say? It's his father-in-law. He doesn't want to get in trouble. I mean, he might get demoted or something. So why would... I was just very curious to what people thought he was going to say to that. Like, oh yeah, the main roster booking is shit. Like, he's not at war with Vince. They have to work together. So I'm not really sure what people were expecting as an answer to Dave Meltzer's question on that media call. The same thing like when he said, oh yeah, WWE's women's wrestling is like the best place to work or whatever for women. What do you expect him to say? Regardless of whether that's true or not, what do you expect him to say? I don't know. It's just weird. So I agree and disagree with Triple H, but the parts that I disagree on, I feel like are because he absolutely must feel that way. I mean, a tag team like the Revival, he put a lot of time and effort to a team like that. American Alpha as well. They're both, 3 of the 4 people in that feud are no longer there. Jason Jordan's still there. He retired. That's not really their fault. But Jordan, even before he retired, wasn't teaming with Gable. WWE broke them up within a year. A year! The Revival were there for a few years, but they were buried beyond ship for the most part, and they won several tag titles, but only towards the end. So, I don't fucking know. It's just, it's crazy. With all main roster call-up shit, I mean, it's been an issue for years. Nakamura doesn't feel as special as he should. There's a lot of people, even Finn Balor before he went back, did not feel as special as he should have. Bray Wyatt does not feel as special as he should. You could say that for a lot of people, unfortunately. Noob's second question. With Finn Balor, Ember Moon, and now Samoa Joe back in NXT, are there any other main roster stars that should return to the NXT roster? A lot of people want Asuka back. I don't see Nakamura coming back, or Kevin Owens, or Sami Zayn. Kevin Owens wanted to go back. When we spoke in August, or rather October of last year, for our interview, and the audio of which is here on the channel. If you want to check it out, please do so. Cheap plug. He had mentioned, I brought up the NXT return, and he mentioned, yeah, he wanted to go back, and the plans were in place for him to go back to NXT at that point, and he wasn't doing anything on the main roster. The feud with Shane ended, and they weren't doing fucking shit with him. So they probably should have brought him to NXT at that point, but they put him on Raw instead. And it just didn't go anywhere. And he never went back to NXT full-time. The War Games thing was a one-off, and that was it. So I think the time for that has passed. He's probably not going back. I don't think he needs to. Sami Zayn would be interesting, just because, I don't know. I think babyface Zayn is what we kind of need at this point on the main roster, not heel Zayn anymore. Nakamura, no. Maybe, just because his main roster run, he's had a lot of success titles-wise, but I don't know. I just don't really need to see Nakamura back in NXT, I don't think. But Asuka, maybe. I know that was an idea a few years ago, but with Asuka, she's just had so much success on the main roster. They kind of need her on the main roster. I'm thinking more about women that could use another run there to really either get better. Like Dana Brooke, all hope is lost. She's just not that good at all. For the time for her to go back was 3-4 years ago, not now. Mandy Rose, I mean, she's so established at this point, she probably just shouldn't go back. A Ruby Riott would have been cool, but she got canned. Santana Garrett having a real run there would have been nice. We never got that opportunity to see that. I don't know. I'm thinking about the rosters right now. Naomi, I don't really see Naomi fitting into that. With the whole lights and the glow stuff, I just don't see that really working well within the current NXT environment. Naomi, who else even is there? Nikki Cross? Maybe, but I feel like when even she got called up, it's okay, she needs to leave. She's been here for a few years now. She needs to leave NXT. Her going back and maybe winning the NXT Women's Championship, I don't know. I don't really need to see that. Sheena, it's too soon. There's no women that I see oh man, I need to see go back to NXT. Sheena probably wishes she was back in NXT, but even by the time that she got called up, she should have been called up a year earlier. She was ready a lot sooner than when they called her up. She was in NXT for 2.5 years. So, I don't see anyone going back to NXT right now. For men, Chad Gable would be nice. I don't know. I'm trying to think, Cedric Alexander would be nice, but it seems like they're using him on Raw right now. I don't know. I would really have to look through the roster. There's no one to my memory or to my knowledge at the moment that screams oh, they should absolutely go back to NXT. Aleister Black would have been nice. Ricochet, definitely. They're not doing jack shit with that guy. I know he's involved in the U.S. Championship picture right now, but does anyone really care? You know what I mean? And it's a good feud, but Ricochet is so beyond damaged. Maybe he should go back to NXT. And he was only there for less than a year anyway. He wasn't there for very long, so of anyone to go back, Ricochet going back would not be the worst thing. And yeah, that's all I can really think of right now. Ali, maybe they're not doing shit with him. Mansoor never really had a real run on NXT before getting called up, so maybe. I don't know what the fuck happened with Damian Priest. John Morrison going to NXT would be interesting. I thought there was a chance he could go there when he first got brought back to WWE a few years ago, but it just didn't happen. He went to SmackDown instead, which was fine. But him in NXT would be cool. But yeah, those are a few people. But I would love to see NXT involved more with the draft come August or September, whenever it's going to be, October. I would love to see NXT more involved so you can call people up to the main roster. And if NXT is indeed a third brand now and it's got 2 hours on USA, they should be moving more Raw and SmackDown people to NXT, like they were doing with ECW back in the day. And that show was just completely beyond damaged where it felt like a demotion. NXT is not ECW. We're not quite there yet, no matter what people might say. So they should incorporate NXT into the draft, in my opinion. I don't see why not. I know that wasn't your question, but that would help the problem of bringing people to NXT and getting people off of NXT. Noob's next question, with the battery recharge teaser, who do you think is coming back with that battery recharge? Tegan Nox, Roderick Strong? Probably Tegan Nox, because she's been gone for almost a year now. I feel like she's probably missed now close to 3 years of her career. I mean, that's just fucking wild. I mean, I think she got signed in 2017, right? She got injured right when she first signed. She was gone for a year. Came back in 2018, and she was in the Mae Young Classic. Got hurt in the Mae Young Classic. Gone for a year. And then she was in NXT for less than a year last year. She came back in late 2019, got hurt in the summer of 2020. And she's been gone for almost a year. She's been gone since July of last year. That's crazy. So it's probably for her. And I hope so. I love Tegan Nox, so I would love to see her back. Maybe Roderick. I don't know how that would really fit in with Roddy, but Yeah, I could see Roddy's. I could see that maybe being for Roderick Strong. That might make sense. Who else? I don't really know. I'm not really sure. They're doing the whole Diamond Mine thing right now too. That's finally happening next week, so we'll see what that's all about. But yeah, the stuff with the battery charge, probably don't get your hopes up for like this big signing. I haven't heard anything about that. It could be for someone that's, in the developmental system they just haven't used yet, like a Carmelo Hayes, who faced Kushida a few weeks ago, but I wouldn't have it be him. He just showed up 2 weeks ago, so probably not. But my guess is probably Tegan Nox, if I had to take a guess. And I think we got 2 more questions here, also from Noob. What are your thoughts on Rhea, Bianca, and Raquel as champions? Do you think one of them will be a transitional champion? I see Bianca with a long reign. I don't see Raquel as a double champion, but I definitely see Rhea dropping the Raw Women's Championship. I don't think any of them are transitional champions. The exact definition of a transitional champion is to transition the title from one person to the next. With none of these women, Raquel and Dakota were transitional champions when they were crowned the first ever NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, only to drop them to Ember and Shotzi later on in the show. They were the definition of transitional champions in that respect. Raquel is not transitional. There's not even one obvious person that she's going to lose the championship to, so she's not transitional. But even same thing with Bianca and Rhea. I could see Rhea losing the championship on Sunday to Charlotte, but I don't think it's because, we're going to get the belt off of Rhea just to put it right back on Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte could win, but I've never got the idea that they only put the belt on Rhea to transition it off of her almost immediately. She's been champion for 2 months. If they wanted to do that, they would have put the belt on Charlotte at Backlash by having her pin Asuka. So that would have been more transitional. Right now, if you have a 2-month reign, that's not exactly a transitional champion. So none of them are transitional champions. What are my thoughts on their, stints as champion? They've all been good. None of them have been blow away amazing, but it's only been 2 months. Raquel's had 2 different title defenses against Mercedes and Ember, 2 good matches. She's been booked well. Rhea's material in terms of promo shit is just terrible more often than not. Whatever she's given to work with is just not good. But she's been having good matches. The 3-way at Backlash was very good. She's had a lot of good matches on Raw with Asuka. She's been booked well. I don't think she's been pinned one-on-one yet. She got pinned by fucking Nikki Cross in a tag team match about a week ago, which was stupid. But she hasn't been, buried yet or anything. And even Bianca, she doesn't get pinned a whole lot. She's been fairly protected. So, I think they've had good runs. It depends on when they're going to lose them. I could see Rhea losing on Sunday. I do not see Bianca losing to Bayley. And I don't see Raquel dropping that championship anytime soon. So far, so good with all 3 women. And time will tell as far as what the remainder of their reigns will have in store. Last question comes from @Scarlet1. Have you heard about Don West being diagnosed with brain lymphoma? And I hate to end on this note, but I did. Just terrible news. Terrible news. He announced the news on his radio show. It made the rounds yesterday in the news, the wrestling news on Tuesday. I love Don West. I always loved his commentary and Impact with him and Tenay, or what I kind of entered on. And I know they were in Impact for the first 10 years or whatever it was. And that was kind of towards the end. Because when I started watching was when they turned him heel. And they took him off the show and he started managing Amazing Red. And it was what are you doing? He was a good manager, but it's what the fuck are you doing? Why ruin a good thing? And that was when TNA was going through management changes and shit. So they switched up the show, took him off commentary, and put Taz in instead. And Taz was completely unmotivated in Impact. He just was not good at all. But yeah, I was always a big Don West guy. They had him do the merchandise at one point. I talked to him briefly at StarCast. I think I said hi to him or something. But he was at StarCast when I went Double or Nothing. I went to Double or Nothing, rather, in Las Vegas 2 years ago. Seems like a really nice guy, so no one deserves that. That's just terrible. So I believe he is undergoing immediate treatment, and hopefully he can improve soon, and he is 100% within the immediate future. So wishing him the best on his road to recovery. I'm a big Don West guy, so my thoughts and prayers and condolences and whatnot. I make it sound like he died or something, which thank God he didn't, but that's just not good news. So I'm pulling for him. I'm hoping for the best because he's a great dude, and I would love to see him back on an announcer's table at some point. Probably not in a regular role, but just to make a one-off, either an Impact or another promotion. I think that'd be cool because Don West is he's a national treasure in more ways than one. So I'm absolutely pulling for him, and I hope the best for Don West. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 394 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, June 16th, 2021. Appreciate you guys checking the show. As always, be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to never miss a video. Be sure to hit the bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. And by subscribing and turning on notifications, you will be notified when my interview with Charlotte Flair goes live tomorrow morning, I believe at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. So be sure to check that out. It was a great conversation. You guys will really enjoy it, I'm sure. And it goes up in article form as well over on Bleacher Report. So don't miss out on that. But yeah, have an awesome one, guys. Have a great rest of your week. And I forgot to mention this, but if you want to send in a question to the show, you can do that by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And be sure to drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.